The Apostle Paul is one of the most debated figures in human history. His ancient texts burn with an intense, undeniable passion. Yet today, those same letters frequently spark intense debate. It is difficult to read his work without bumping into some highly controversial teachings, especially regarding his tolerance, or apparent lack thereof, for women in ministry. But zooming in on just a few polarizing sentences strips away the context of an incredibly complex life. To accurately read the theology, we have to look at the whole man, tracing the thousands of physical miles he walked and the massive internal shift he experienced along the way. That journey begins in Tarsus. Young Saul grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home, yet he played in neighborhoods thoroughly immersed in Greco-Roman pagan culture. He was brilliant, eventually traveling to Jerusalem to study at the feet of the esteemed Rabbi Gamaliel. But despite his elite religious pedigree, Saul found himself completely strangled by the rigidity of the law. He channeled that frustration into violent zeal, serving as a calculating and devious enforcer who meticulously organized the suffering of the early church. Then came a literal roadblock. On his way to Damascus to arrest more believers, he claimed Jesus Christ directly intercepted him. That encounter shattered his previous trajectory. The man who had once dedicated his life to crushing this new movement spent the rest of his days as its most vital champion. Saul, now known as Paul, emerged from that experience with a pride-open mind. He traded his role as an enforcer for that of a restless, driven preacher. This map shows how far his drive took him. Over 2 journeys, he trekked through Cyprus, Pamphylia, and Galatia. By his third, pushing deep into Europe, he systematically targeted cultural hubs, moving from Antioch through Asia into Macedonia and Achaia. Those lines on the map represent a complete dismantling of cultural barriers. He took a localized Jewish sect and carried it outward, intent on being a light for the Gentiles across the known world. This kingdom road was incredibly hostile. Traveling in the 1st century meant navigating sudden storms, surviving shipwrecks, and dodging near-constant death threats. Even reaching his destinations meant fierce resistance. He provoked massive riots in places like Ephesus and went toe-to-toe with philosophers over the idols of Athens. Yet underneath that tough, argumentative exterior was an incredibly tender heart. He agonized over the fledgling communities he left behind, a total reversal from the cold persecutor he used to be. To bridge those massive geographic divides, he used letters. These epistles became the connective tissue for a scattered network of new believers, keeping them anchored when he couldn't be there in person. Utterly consumed by his devotion to Christ, he didn't view these beatings, imprisonments, and shipwrecks as setbacks. He saw them as gain. Looking back at the map, his final voyage takes him past Crete and Malta, straight to the capital of the empire. But he didn't arrive in Rome as a free man. He arrived as a prisoner in chains. Staring down the absolute center of imperial power under house arrest, he didn't stop working. He continued to write, advising and training spiritual sons like Timothy to carry the work forward. He faced the end of his life with a sharp memory of what had happened on that road to Damascus, refusing to abandon his post until he had fully finished his race. The sheer reach of his legacy is proof that even the most flawed, violent antagonists can be repurposed into the architects of a massive global movement. Slowing down, more reflective tone, Paul's trajectory suggests a deliberate design for every life, implying that your place in this present generation is no accident. It asks what could actually be accomplished through you if you were fully available and readily cooperative. When you look back at the map of your own life, what kind of footprints will you leave behind if you allow your safe plans to be interrupted by the exact same presence that stopped Paul in his tracks?